We've talked a lot about gear, but let's talk specifically about where to find sustainable gear. Because frankly, here at Terradrift, we're all about adventure and exploration that does as little harm to the planet as possible, and about doing our best to reduce the amount of impact we leave behind in the places we visit. And that includes what sort of gear we buy. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I am a gear junkie. I love new gear. Every time a new pack or tent or sleeping pad is released from a brand that I love, I want it. But constantly buying new gear is not only expensive, it's unsustainable. After all, most gear and outdoor clothing is made from synthetic materials that are a byproduct of petroleum and that require intense amounts of energy and resources and water and plastic and chemicals. Most components that go into this stuff release harmful substances and gases into the environment. But it's not just the new gear that's causing problems, it's the old gear too. In our disposable culture, we're used to just throwing things we don't want anymore into the garbage where it'll end up in a landfill. In fact, more than 9 million tons of textiles, including outdoor clothing and gear, goes to US landfills every year. And since most gear is made of those synthetic materials, it breaks down and decomposes very, very slowly. Sometimes leaching toxic chemicals like PFAs into the ground and waterways, which can cause health and environmental problems far outside the reaches of landfill property lines. That makes buying used gear, which has the joint benefits of keeping textiles out of landfills and negating the need to create new gear from virgin materials, the most sustainable option. Now, hear me out. Used gear doesn't have to mean a backpack that's 20 years old and threadbare and falling apart. Often, aspirational outdoorists will buy products like clothing or equipment, use it a few times, decide they don't like it or aren't going to be camping or backpacking as often as they thought, and are just looking to get rid of it. Other times, people like me end up with too much gear that we've only used a handful of times but is not doing much good sitting in a gear closet somewhere. It makes a lot more sense if I release a tent or sleeping pad back into the world so that someone else can enjoy it and doesn't have to buy another brand new piece of gear. There are plenty of reasons people sell outdoor gear, of course, but the bottom line is that there's plenty of it available. And we always recommend looking for used versions of the items on your wish list before buying them new. You can do so on websites like REI Used, Gear Trade, eBay or Craigslist, even Facebook Marketplace, or at local outdoor retailers with used gear sections, or even some that specialize in used gear. Those are my favorite. Even big brands like Patagonia and the North Face have dedicated used gear sections on their websites in order to encourage people to both recycle their gear and buy used. Long story short, there are plenty of places to find quality used gear. When you're looking to buy new gear, look for the most sustainable gear possible. That could be a jacket made out of recycled materials, a sleeping bag insulated with synthetic biodegradable insulation, a tent that doesn't contain fire retardant, outerwear with PFC-free DWR, or clothing that's not only recycled, but recyclable. Yup, I said clothing that's recyclable. Because the gold standard of sustainable manufacturing is recyclability. This is often very difficult to do, as clothing and gear is typically made up of many different materials that are hard to separate in order to recycle. So these items are still few and far between and do tend to cost more than their conventional counterparts, but are much kinder to the planet because they're manufactured in a circular way. Brands like Houdini and On make clothing that's recycled and recyclable. But if you can't find a recyclable product, the next best thing is to look for gear that's made of sustainable materials and built to last. In addition to the features that I mentioned, you can also look for specific certifications that indicate whether or not a product or brand is sustainable in one way or another. Things like a carbon neutral certification, or if a shirt is Blue Sign approved. All of these indicate that the brand took care in one way or another to reduce their footprint. We'll put a link to an article that kind of describes some of those certifications and the differences in sustainability terms in the course text below. So in addition to choosing sustainable gear, choose gear that's durable. Durability is relative, of course, depending on how you treat your gear, store it, and adventure with it. But generally speaking, the more durable and robust the fabrics that are used to make things like backpacks and sleeping bags, the longer they're gonna last. You can also look out for gear made of recycled materials, like camp mugs made of recycled stainless steel, shoes, jackets, backpacks, and more. There are even sunglasses made out of recycled ocean plastic. These materials decrease the carbon footprint of each product, sometimes as much as half, which really adds up, especially as more outdoorists choose recycled products over products made with virgin materials. It's also worth looking into brands and their commitment to sustainability. I mean, just because a camp chair is made of recycled plastic bottles doesn't mean it's necessarily sustainable, or that the brand that made it makes sustainability a priority. So check to see what brands' guiding principles are. Are they carbon neutral? Do they offset part or all of their manufacturing processes? Do they invest in social or environmental causes? Are they making efforts to reduce their footprint? Do they use sustainable packaging? Essentially, ask if sustainability is at the forefront of their mission statement. If it is, you can make a few assumptions about how that business operates and whether or not their goals align with yours for the planet and the future of climate change. And, all of the outdoor places we love to play. There are plenty of other things to look out for when it comes to sustainable gear, of course, including undyed gear, natural and organic materials like cotton and hemp, which I already mentioned should be used judiciously when in the outdoors, and materials that are free from harmful chemicals like PFCs. So don't be afraid to do some research when it's time to gear up to find out what the most sustainable option is. And if at all possible, steer clear of products that could be considered disposable or throwaway items. Instead, invest in gear that's gonna last. And then do your part to stretch your gear's useful life as long as possible by taking care of it. If you want to keep your used gear in action for years and years, stick around. The next lesson is all about gear repair. Empowering, right? So gear up sustainably and wander on. Blue sign and climate neutral and circular and recycled and ocean plastic. So many things. So many things. It does require a lot of research. I'm not gonna lie, but you can do it. It's not that hard. We'll put a bunch of links in the course description, okay? And that way you can just clicky, clicky, read up, learn all kinds more stuff if you want to, and be on your merry way with, more sustainable gear. Yay!